Hello there! I'm Squire Callahan Ridgeborn, almost a Battlemaster, always a wizard, and tonight I am joined by Phinaes Stormwind, a Paragon Bard from the Rising Winds. Phineas, welcome to the show.
To be on.
Phineas, I'm so excited to bring you in. For those of you from out of Kingdom, Phineas and I actually got our Paragons at the same event, Bridge Wars, last year in 2025. And so I'm really excited to bring in and talk about that tonight. And as one of the Rising Winds' newest Paragons, I don't think as of right now, and at time of publishing, the Rising Winds has made any more Paragon. This should be coming out right before our March event. So
Right. So yeah, there wouldn't really be an opportunity to.
you are, for the a very limited window of time, going to be the newest Paragon of the Rising Winds, and so we gotta get in
Still
here while
feels
the
weird.
hammer's hot. What was that?
Still feels weird.
I think you earned it. And so let's just jump right in. Let's start talking about it. What do you think the main job of Bard is on the battlefield?
So from my perspective, the main thing that Bard does is set up your teammates for success. Whether that's looking at their formation and going, oh, that warrior with a big shield is stopping my guys from actually closing on them. Lost that guy, get him out of there, let my front line engage. If there's an enemy wizard who's trying to cast, catching the break con, it's a lot less about what can I personally do to change things as how can I adjust the situation so that my teammates can fill in and succeed at what they're doing. That can also be on the battery side of giving people their abilities back so they can use them more frequently and get more mileage out of it.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think you're really well known for here in the Rising Winds is being that team support, supporting the team the way it needs it in the moment it needs it, and transitioning back and forth between the different play styles. So I'm really excited to deep dive into that, try to steal your play style. So before we get deep into the class stuff, I would like to know, how did you start in Amtgard?
Yeah, so I had a friend that I knew through playing D&D with them for several years, and also was part of the same martial arts club in college. And he had some coworkers, Rain and Skiffy, if you're familiar with them, who started up a after work LARP group. Basically, they're like, "Hey, we really enjoy this Amtgard thing. We're going to start up this group after work hours." And my friend said,
Okay.
"Hey, here's this thing that's happening. You should go try it because I know you like martial arts and fantasy stuff. So maybe you'll like LARP." So I came out, had a blast with it, and Bard was actually my first class that I played.
Oh wow.
It is definitely an
Okay.
experience being it is definitely an experience starting the game as Bard. I do not necessarily recommend it unless you are willing to kind of do the deep dive into learning how class abilities work and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had fun with it.
A bard is definitely a rough starter class. I feel like it doesn't really come into its own during the early leveling. So
It really doesn't. Like when you get to like 3 or 4 is when it kind of hits its stride. Before then, you're a peasant with maybe a shield and a few shows.
yeah, like early bar, like that's a slog, especially if you're coming in as a brand new player without any of the immunities, or I mean, and maybe that really helped you develop your play style because you were able to solve every problem as a bard. But that, yeah, bard is
Hmm.
not the starter class I would hand most people. So that's awesome. What is your favorite kind of battle game to play bard?
So in general, my favorite games are ones with distributed objectives. So when you have like a single point of contention, it just kind of focuses everything onto that one thing and it kind of turns into a slugfest. When you have multiple, for instance, nodes that are spread throughout, or there's a bunch of things to collect, or there's objectives spread throughout the battlefield that you kind of have to pay attention to. It helps break things up and it allows very different play styles to shine. It means that you can have people who just want to do the straight up fighting of that frontline combat. It allows the assassins and the skirmishers in general to do flanking maneuvers. It asks you to be more aware of your surrounding, and it gives you more freedom and space to breathe and think things through and be tactical rather than just
Mm.
going, cool, I'm going to go smashing into this front line and shout at people on the other side of this front line for the next
Yeah.
10 to 20 minutes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I also really enjoy that style of more open gaming. So I think that really works well for, at least for the casters. Maybe the line fighters like tighter games, but I think spreading people out more makes it more fun.
Yeah.
Why did you pick Bard?
So when I was looking over the various classes available, the thing that struck me about Bard was the team play potential of it and the tactical aspects of it. Most of the other classes had very much straightforward, oh, wizard, I can blow things up, or I warrior, you have armor, you hit things. It asked you to be a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more tactical in how you do things. You don't have a lot of ways to just directly finish things. Most of the things are things that give you time or adjust the situation, and I really enjoyed that tactical aspect, as well as that feeling of uplifting my team through the battery abilities and the support abilities.
Okay. What makes Bard unique amongst the casters? What sets it apart?
So we kind of touched on this already, but one of the things is the battery abilities that it has. It's the only class that has things like Empower and I don't know why I started with the least common one first, but it has Song of Power, it has Restoration, it has these abilities that allow you to give people their abilities back. And it also is weird in that it doesn't really have any ranged direct damage. It doesn't have projectiles, it doesn't have spell balls. It doesn't even really have hard cease because it doesn't have the ice blast or hold person. Most of the things it can do, sure, I can lost you, I can awe you, but that's buying time. And a lot of the times, if you awe somebody, if you don't follow it up, they walk 20 feet away, release themselves or get released by an ally, and then they're right back in.
At that point, you just have command school shove.
Right. So you've got, yeah, having the softer CC with the battery abilities plus the skirmish ability makes a very good gap filler. And again, back to that team play aspect of I can step into that line or I can step behind that line and be more focused on maneuvering and focused on helping my teammates and less focused on dealing direct damage to the enemy.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas healer and druid tend to be focused more on either, like with druid, either selfish druid, avatar of nature, go out there with a big pole arm and beat people, or stand more back, enchant other people. Healer, you can do the same things. Like you can take a board and you can take a sword and you can fight up on that front line, but it doesn't have quite the same feel of a bard being there because the bard is more built for that front line. You can manage to do it as those other ones.
Okay. Yeah. So that very much explains the philosophy of barding in a way that I appreciate.
But yeah, like they conduct the battlefield and they it's going to sound kind of odd, but they do have an effect of inspiring their allies because again, either giving them that ability back that they were missing or giving them that opening to allow them to capitalize on it. You are inspiring your allies and demoralizing your opponents by breaking up their formation or forcing them to go away or stopping their casting. So as you said, you have that sort of battlefield maneuvering aspect, whereas a lot of other classes are focused more on either smash or just straight, here, you need to get back alive and get back out there to smash people.
I agree. Okay. What is your favorite bard spell?
So from a flavor and from a theming perspective, I'm going to say Song of Power because it very much leans into that. I'm going to take some time to step back and I'm going to support my team in a way that is less direct but is very meaningful when it comes up. Like, there's more effective things on the field in terms of affecting the enemy or changing the course of the battle. But for me, Song of Power leans into that idea of, again, supporting your team and taking that moment to link up. It also creates those moments because if you have people who know, oh, I can run over to Phinaes, say, hey, could you give me a Song of Power? I pop that Song of Power or give them a confidence. They get a couple of abilities back, and then we can use that moment to then form up as a group and roll off to the next objective together. So it kind of creates both the flavor of, hey, I'm a bard singing a song, helping my allies, but provides also that mechanical, hey, gather in, we're all here. A couple people often, once you start Song of Power, will go, oh, wait, Song of Power is going. I'm going to join in as well and get some stuff back. And again, after that, you can go all move together and kind of shift from that position of strength and coordination.
Yeah. The thing that I like as a caster main, and no matter what class I'm playing, I tend to do a lot of recharging because I believe in using your abilities as often as possible. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that when we're on a team, I don't have to ask if you have Song of Power. I just know you brought it.
Yep.
And we've arrived at the point now where I don't even have to ask you. I just run up and start charging next to you, and then you get started with the Song of Power.
Yeah, your reflex as a bard should be, oh, I hear somebody charging. Unless I am actively engaged in something else in that moment, it's almost always better for the team to pause for that moment, give them the Song of Power so that they can get that done faster. Because that takes a little bit of your personal time to save your team more time. Well, the same amount of time, technically, if there's only one person charging.
But as soon as you get two people charging, you get exponentially more time back with the Song of Power, which is crazy good value.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, time is really the fundamental resource of the game. From my perspective, even getting kills is buying time. It's just a really effective, very common way of buying time because you're forcing them to go back to base and wait there for a bit. Basically, every objective, when it's not just a mutual annihilation game, is built around how do you buy time to do things and stop your opponents from wasting your time.
Manipulation. I've flirted with the idea of buying one of those chess clocks. It's like a timer that switches back and forth, and trying to build a battle game out of that. I think that would be really fun if you like physically saw the timer clicking down. Like, yes, we have to hold this node for 5 minutes, and there's this chess clock in the middle, and we can slap it. That's all you have to do to switch back and forth and just slap the chess clock. I'm like, ooh, I feel like that'd be a really intense game with that ticking timer going.
Makes it a little bit more visceral than, yeah, the Reeve is standing there in the corner with a stopwatch.
They've got their phone there, and they're watching the game, and you're like, okay. And then they check, and they're like, oh, it's been 6 extra minutes. I feel like the more intense battle game needs the ticking clock, the building of the suspense. Almost there's a inevitableness to a ticking clock that I think would be neat to put into a battle game. So maybe someday, if I'm warcratting some event, I'll sneak a chess clock into the budget and make it happen.
Gotcha.
What bard spell do you like the least, and not one that you just don't use, but maybe something that people are using that you think isn't great?
Starting from the one that I don't use and that I think occasionally people use and just don't fully grasp it is agoraphobia. Like, it sounds great on paper. Cool. You have to stay 20 feet away from from everybody. Fun fact, and I actually learned this recently, it doesn't actually stop you attacking anybody. It just forces you away. You can still cast on people. You can still, it just forces you away. And for the value, it's just not that great. And most of the time, you can just get an ambulance release to get them out of it. Beyond that, I think to some extent, a lot of people, this isn't really a spell thing, but this is a tactic thing. A lot of people get hung up on the idea of the insult awe combo, where you insult somebody and then all of them, haha, you can't do anything for 30 seconds unless you get released. But most of the time, that's spending 2 spells to do a thing that if you had used better positioning and better field awareness, you could have achieved with just 1 anyway. And most of the time, just awing or just insulting somebody gets the same amount of result out.
Right, because in a game of time and attrition, you're really looking to require someone to expend resources or expend time. And if you're spending 2 spells to make someone go away for 30 seconds, that feels suboptimal. Like they're still back really soon, and they can still move. And a lot of times I've seen agoraphobia and the insult awe combo just result in really wide flanking. Like, oh, I have to be by myself or not, within 20 feet of you. I'm just going to go 20 feet over here, and then I'm just going to cut into your back line now. And then you end up in that scenario. So it feels bad, I think, to spend all the points on that.
And again, go ahead.
I was just double checking. Agoraphobia is a 5th level per refresh, so you can only get so many of those.
Yeah, at that point, if you're going to spend per refreshes, just get terror if you want to go that route. Possibly experience it if you have a bard on your team who can confidence it, because there is very few reasons you should ever be doing a full charge 10 on the field. I've done it before. I've played games where I just charged 10 restoration because I was standing at a node just holding it, and then nothing better to do because we needed to have somebody minding that node. Most of the time in the 30, 40, 50 seconds, depending on how fast you do it and how cleanly you do it and how much you want to be out of breath. Again, back to time is a resource. The more time you spend standing around not catching your breath because you're saying the charging can't,
Right.
more than likely there's better things you can be doing with your time.
Well, and that's something that I tell wizard players a lot is if it takes you longer to recharge than it takes for them to respawn or to come back onto the field, you've wasted your spell. Which is why
Yeah.
if you're on a kingdom field and you've got healers standing around waiting for someone to red, it's not really a great idea to start using your kill combos because you're going to have
Yeah.
to recharge. And unless you're in a position where you can use the steal life to get it back immediately, you're kind of up a creek. And Bard doesn't, I believe, doesn't have access to steal life.
Nope. The only way you can do it is innate, and double checking
Right.
to make sure I am remembering correctly. Yeah, they can buy up to 4 innate, which my perspective on is it is a potential clutch ability. Like sometimes you just need that charge back, but
Mhm.
most of the time, since you don't get anything except like Song of Interference naturally chargeable, and confidence naturally chargeable, you're spending extra points to make something chargeable and a point into the innate to be able to get it back quickly that you could have spent to get just another per life spell that you will have over and over again every single time you come alive.
Right. You're dumping, if you max it out, you're dumping 6 points into a spell. And yeah, they're lower level points. It's sort of a way of rolling up your points.
Yeah.
Like, eh, you know? And then you get the four innates, and then you're like, okay, do I pop the innate now? Do I save it for when I'm about to use the ability? The timing problem with innate is there, and you'll see a lot
Mm-hmm.
of newer players or middle tier players that are using innate incorrectly, or they're afraid to use their innate.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a place for it, but I personally don't ever take innate. I find it's easy enough
Yeah.
to get things back without it.
Mm-hmm.
It
I pretty much only take innate on healer when I'm running priest because it's a per life charge 3
which is
at that point.
it's really good on healer and not very good anywhere else. Like
Yeah.
it's fine. I just would rather spend my second level points on something else.
Mm-hmm.
But and maybe somebody out there has got a completely different play style and it's built entirely on having those 4 and 8. But if you're playing a bard and your playstyle is built around having the 4 and 8s, that feels like a weird move. Maybe they're
Yeah.
playing really short games. I mean, in really short games, innate can be amazing. If your game is
If
only
you're playing
lasting
like
10 minutes,
being able to just go terror, 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 oh hey, innate, 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 terror, terror, and just keep
Mhm.
up the pressure on whatever, sure. Most of the time I build lists trying for longevity, and part of that is because at our local park we almost always play like 20-minute games at least. So
And so
most of the time I
unless you're
build my
yeah.
most of the time I build my lists primarily around per lives and then like a couple of per refreshes. Occasionally I'll throw in a couple of stuns as threat casts or the like, but mostly per lives because again, that's something that you get back every time you die. You're expected to die a couple of times every game because as most people should realize, the average kill death spread is 1
Mm.
because by definition it balances out. So unless you just expect to always be the best person on the field and just never die, you're going to be respawning several times during the game.
Well, I mean, you peasants might be respawning all the time. I know, but like you're not wrong. Your kill to death ratio is your mileage may vary, and it's going to depend on what kind of player you are as well.
True.
Like if you're the warlord, you can realistically expect a better kill death ratio
Yes.
unless there's a good caster on the other team. In which case, you need
Mm-hmm.
to be a counter cast. So there's caboodles of things that can go into that. But I don't think that the kill death ratio is the end all be all. I think if the
Yeah.
thing we care about is being a good battle gamer, you can be a good battle gamer with a very low kill death ratio.
And honestly, one of the things that I see with battle game designers sometimes is I think, not fully internalizing how big of a difference the respawn time makes in games. Because if you have like a 30-second respawn, especially in larger games, that means that your per life spells are. I could just go out there with like 20 shoves and a pile of loss and just go burn through all my per lives, die, come back 30 seconds later, do it again. And there's so much just stuff being thrown out because I can just get it back so cheaply versus
Yeah.
longer death counts where you have to be a little bit more sparing and you have to weigh it more carefully against the time that you're not on the field being useful. Because even being on the field, not casting spells, you can still be in position and be available to respond, which is value added.
And something that I don't know about other kingdoms, but at least here in the Rising Winds, all of our kingdom games always have a 60-second respawn, which is the same amount of time as being hit by a spell ball with an
Yeah.
engulfing effect. So if you get hit by a spell ball with an engulfing effect and you're not getting released immediately, you might as well just take the death and go back and come back with all your stuff back. So like something that I'm hoping to see change in the not so distant future, but I won't hold my breath. I'd like to see us go to 2 or even 3 minute respawn.
Definitely be interested to see what that does to the way people play the game.
Well, and if you think about it, like I don't know how it is. What park are you out of?
Play the Twin River.
Okay. I don't know where that is, but at Valley of the Twin River, do you guys do touch and go games ever?
No, the minimum we usually run is 30, most of the time 40, and we honestly, even at our local park, prefer 60. Even if it's a 5-on-5 game, you can get away with 60. Now, if it's a 3-on-3 or on 4-on-4 game, you need to have it at like a 30 or 40-second death count, just because at 4-on-4 you get 2 people dead, and now it's a 4-on-2, and it just kind of snowballs.
The problem that you'll run into, I've played in a not insignificant number of touch and go games. At the park I was going to at the time, River's Edge, we were playing a lot of touch and go games, and those games get super broken as soon as anybody brings out Ice Ball or Entangle Ball or Lightning Bolt or any of those things, much less all of them at once. And if you're like in that scenario, the Elemental Barrage Wizard is king, because it's just like, oh yeah, I'm not even going to bring the Sphere of Annihilation. What are you going to do? Run back and come back? No. I'm going to stop you, freeze you, make you stand still, and then we'll run around and get the objective. And so, like, if you're in a touch and go game, the making people stop and like not interact, the CC becomes even more important. Whereas I think if we saw longer respawn clocks, it would become increasingly optimal to make sure players stay dead instead of the CC. And I think that would be part of the solution to the frozen problem. Like, I talked to a lot of people about battle gaming, right? And the number one complaint I get about Magic in general is that being frozen sucks. And if you're frozen for 60 seconds, like, yeah, that's kind of a bummer. If the death count is longer than the spells, it doesn't feel so bad. But we've culturally set respawn at 60 seconds equivalent to being iceballed. And so it's, I feel like it changes that perspective a lot, you know? And if we saw 3-minute death counts, maybe we would see a lot more optimization towards actually killing players instead of just hard CCing them. That'd be a meta shift, and who can predict what the actual meta will be?
And if I've learned nothing else, the meta across the breadth of the country varies substantially more than I think most people realize.
See, and I don't know, because I've talked to a bunch of people, and it feels like kingdoms have metas. I don't think it's a like part of the country thing. I think that it's going to be who's the top, the top X% players in that kingdom and what they're playing. Shifts the meta a ton. Like if you've got, no wizard players in your kingdom, and then it's seen as the joke class. Like here in the Rising Winds, nobody's playing barbarian out here, right? Like we've got not, I think 2 or 3 active Paragon barbarians, and at some kingdom games we don't have a single barbarian out there, but in Florida there's a bunch of them. Maybe I'm thinking of Crystal Groves. So it just depends on what your kingdom is doing and what the really good players are doing. That's going to make a big difference, and that's going to change the meta. And so we can't really look at the country as a whole and be like, this is the meta.
That was kind of what I was saying as well. It's like there's different metas across the country, not because of different parts of the country, just but because of different play styles and different people in prominent positions. And also, to some extent, part of it is different weather. This is a bit of a wild tangent, but like down in Texas,
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Texas has different battle gaming than Canada.
Right. I talked to my guys down in Neverwinter, and they're like, yeah, nobody wears armor down here in Neverwinter. I'm like, what do you mean no one's wearing armor? Like, are you all broke? Like, what's going on? No, they don't wear armor because it's 110 degrees with 500 billion% humidity. I'm like, well, yeah, because you live in the worst place in the world sometimes, guys. Like, I will never understand the philosophy of people that are like, hey, we're going to move to this state. It's hot all the time, and the air is wet, and there are giant lizards that want to kill us. And every once in a while, the ocean comes up here and breaks everything. Why would you want to live there? I don't understand. The concept of a hurricane is terrifying in a way that, like, I grew up in a state where the biggest problem was earthquakes or volcanoes, and those are
Mm.
like those hardly ever happen.
Yep.
Hurricanes. I feel like there's a hurricane every couple of weeks, but that's neither here nor there. We're tangenting a little hard here, but I
Wildly.
agree with you that there's a like. I'd be really interested to see if we could have perfect data. Like, I'd love to pinpoint the spots where armor starts to drop off. Like, if every town had a local Amtgard chapter, like every town has a football team, and we could just do a survey and be like, hey, here's the armor parallel, and you've got the leather belt, and then you've got the plate crew, and then up in Canada you have we're all wearing mittens, and the swords have mittens built into them. If Amtgard was like 800 times bigger than it is now, we could have such amazing data and wild shenanigans coming out of it. It'd be great. But yeah, the armor thing is a weird one for me. Like, the idea of your best Paragon players not wearing armor at all, like, that's nuts to me, because it's just part of what we do. So I think we've rambled around quite a bit. Let's circle back in and talk about Bard some more, because it's I might be out of practice here. I think we've rambled off. But what is a non-meta aspect of Bard that you think is really neat?
Honestly, granted, I've been trying to get this to work and it's only marginal. I enjoy the fact that it gets longsword. I feel a lot of people forget that it gets longsword because it
Mm,
is not like great. Like, you go up against
oh, what's
anybody with
that?
sword and board, especially if they have armor, trying
Mm,
to do something with a longsword, just most of the time you're better off with either a short or a short and a shield. I enjoy longsword, even if I don't do combat caster, having the longsword where I can have the two hands on it and then let go to be able to cast on people. To a
right.
certain extent, I also really like Legend. Like, I feel like there's some levels of mixed results with Legend because on the one hand, it gives you 2 more extensions per life at the cost of 1 6 level point. So you get basically like a little bit extra. I find that as long as you're careful with it, it actually extends your threat range quite a bit because you have those in your pocket and you can afford to spend those extensions a little bit more freely than if you could only have 2.
Yeah, I can see that. And something that I see you do a lot is extend break con people that are trying to do spells.
Yeah. As one, they're not
And that
expecting it. Like, especially if they're honestly, one of the best things you can do to try to disrupt things is, for instance, oh, you see that front line, and again, stereotypical example of warrior with big shield is on the front line and preventing, like, they're the threat that's kind of stopping my group from actually rushing in. Cast Lost on
right.
the warrior. Warrior goes back. The healer sidles over to go to release them, and I'm just like, hey, Magal, extension, I command suppress, and
And
then
you got
extension insult him on top. Because now I have taken their attention, I
him.
have taken that person off the front line. I have, by that same spell, pulled their healer off to the side to try to deal with that. And
Hmm.
then, once they are almost at the point that they could do something about it, then you engage the thing to disrupt further and stop them from actually doing the thing they're achieving. So they're now both out of position and haven't achieved their objective.
Right.
So you can kind of
Which
chain that together
at that point
down
you've
that
got a
line.
cascading series of failures you can try to manipulate.
Exactly.
Okay. I want to circle back to that longsword for a second. That longsword tech you said you're working on. Are you doing longsword and a board of some kind, or are you just straight longsword?
I wouldn't say that I'm actively working on it. It's just that I enjoy it. Usually, the way
Okay.
I've run it historically, though I haven't done it as much recently, would have been just the longsword on its own to basically be there as more defense because it is actually more nimble in some ways than a short simply because you have the ability to use the two hands in
Mm,
concert rather than this doesn't apply as much because of the fact that our weapons are so light,
right.
but having that little bit of extra reach, especially against people who are unarmored, being able to have the
Mm-hmm.
two hands and have a little bit more structure in your blocks and your strikes, and then having the ability to let go of one hand and get a surprise. Hey, by the way, you're used to fighting shorts. I've mostly been fighting with it at a short range. My lunge and plus this gets me halfway across the field, and you weren't
Mm-hmm.
expecting me to hit you from two people down the line in the skirmish.
I find that longsword often will mess with the like Orders of the Warrior ladder fighters a lot too, because they get so locked into short sword range that they forget longsword can go a lot further.
Right.
You can get a lot of mileage out of that. But you
So again, once
also
they have armor, it kind of goes out the window because
right.
you get that one hit off because they weren't expecting it, and they've lost a point of armor.
Exactly. And so mileage may vary. Maybe if you're down in
Yeah.
Texas, the longsword is the secret sauce that you've been needing this whole time. But in the heavily armored territories, I would agree with your assessment. And that's why I stopped buying the longsword as a wizard, because it was too expensive opportunity cost wise to make it viable. I tried to make the Ravaged longsword build work, and it just couldn't get it to come together.
Yeah.
Okay. What part of Bard do you find the most difficult, the most challenging?
As you can imagine, tying back to some of the stuff I touched on earlier, if you get caught out, you basically have shoved them,
Mm-hmm.
lost yourself, die. Broadly speaking, you don't really have a hard stop, especially against the fact that, most of the field is either straight up immune to command or can readily release themselves.
Right.
So you have to be very proactive about paying attention to where you're positioning yourself and not getting caught out in that way. Now, if you're running Battle Bard, it's a different story because now you've got those 2 points of armor, you've got your shield, you've got a sword, and you're able to hang in that fight a bit more. Especially if you wanted to run more of a dervish bard, more of a caster bard, making sure that you are aware of the entire field at once, figuring out where you need to be, and getting yourself there out, leaving yourself exposed to getting rushed down or getting shut down by an opposing wizard casting Breakcon on you in anticipation of somebody running you down.
Right.
And figuring out that sort of a thing, because you don't have, like, as a wizard, you have a self teleport with a swift. You can heat their weapon or use wounding to strike off their leg or hold person, or like there's a bunch of different things you can do to stop somebody who's rushing you. If the
You don't
person
have to
rushing you
sell
as
me
a bard
wizard.
is
It's great class.
yeah, if the person rushing you as a bard, if you don't have either the stick and the shield and whatnot to be able to just hang in that fight, if somebody's rushing you and they're immune command for whatever reason, you better hope that your shove gives you enough time to get back into position, or else be able to self-lost yourself and knock out that way.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to share a fun story of something you did as a bard?
So one of my favorite memories that I have playing Bard was at the War of the Phoenix at June event a couple of years ago. This was an ongoing battle game where they were experimenting with having basically they had one battle game that was happening throughout like the entire day, and then like
Mhm.
every hour they would check the nodes, and then occasionally there would be like scene battle games which were a little bit more structured. But during that, there was a point where me and Mountain were both on the same team, and we were both playing Bard. He was running a sword and board bard list, and I was running. I believe at that point it was a longsword dervish list. And because it was an ongoing battle game and there weren't many, like the refreshers were like once every 2 hours type of a deal. So basically all per lives. We both took the full bardic handshake of confidence, restoration, and song of power with restoration experience. So we formed up, and he's again, Mountain,
I know Mountain.
medium shield, board, and large and big present.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go out there and go shove, and we just ran as a group for like a solid half an hour. The two of us moving up, shove, lost, handshake. I restore the delightful potency, my power grants me confidence. I sing this fire, my comes along, out of battle, I pause the rest, it takes it, and then swap. We could have our entire per life list back in 17 seconds. We timed it after.
Oh, that's nasty. Mountain's the perfect
With the
person
confidence
to team
back,
up with.
at the end of that 17 seconds. So we would just roll up and go, oh, they're trying to cast at us, insult you, shove you. Didn't have break on at that point, but again, just solid half hour of us just kind of roaming around, going, okay, Isolane moves up and rolls on a couple of people. Somebody tries to move up a mountain, I insult them so they have to look at me for a bit, but if they actually try to move towards me, he would just fall on them.
Right.
And I've been
You
wanting to
had the
do that,
perfect
like
wombo
tag team
combo.
bard Yeah, I'd wanted to be doing that tag team bard basically
Mm-hmm.
since almost the first year because I saw that that was a thing that you could kind of do back
Mm-hmm.
way back when I first started and was reading up the rule book. It's like, oh, you can get your stuff back. You can like I had put that thing together, but so often, even when you have multiple bards on the same team,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really get that click moment where it's like, no, we are rolling together with deliberation and planning on resetting that over and over again. And until you have the mindset of that you are getting your pearl lives back regularly, it changes the way you can approach the game because we are used to thinking of our own class as what we're doing in isolation.
Right.
And we theory craft a lot about what we're doing in isolation. And we cast spells based on what we're doing in isolation because that's the thing you can count on. When you can know, oh, I'm running with somebody who has my back, and we have this ongoing loop of, oh, find a moment to step back out of combat, get all of our prayer lives back, re engage. You have so much more liberty to just spam your spells and get them out there and do things with them instead of having to go, okay, I need to be a little bit more cautious about what I'm casting and when. It gives you,
Yeah.
it really,
Having a pocket bard is the best feeling in the world.
yeah.
And I've had a pocket bard for an event, and that is the dumbest, most like insane thing you can just have as a pocket bard. And yeah, it works so
Yeah,
well.
Bard's primary weapon most of the time, again, Battle Bard excluded somewhat because Battle Bard does very much manage to be a bit more solo, a bit more just smash into that front line. But a lot of the times, a Bard's primary weapon is their team.
That's a bumper sticker right there. Like, I'm the bard. My weapon is the rest of you, or something in there.
Right.
There's bard merch somewhere in here that I think we're gonna circle around it. There's got to be a catchy phrase. Put that in the comments if you can think of the catchy bard phrase. That's my team is my blade or something. Show up at the good old bear pit, but you just brought some other guy and he's gonna fight for you. Okay, yeah, that the War of the Phoenix was such a good event too. I
Mhm.
just had Subutai on the show to talk about War of the Phoenix, and he told me about how he's going to try to run it again in June 2027. So that'll be really cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that'll be a really cool event. Yeah, I'm assuming it'll probably happen again. It was a really popular event, and so
Mm.
unless something happens, it should be coming back. But that's a full year away, so we'll see what happens. You never know. Okay, well, we will be right back after a quick word from today's video sponsor. Hello again, and welcome to the ad. Today's video is sponsored by me, Paragon Wizard Callahan Richborn, the proprietor of the Almost Battlemaster Callahan YouTube channel, and I'm here today to talk to you because I need your help. When I started this YouTube channel, my goal was to try to get as many Paragons as possible to come in and reveal to us all their secrets so that we can steal their tech and know how to do battle gaming better together. And through my time running the channel, I have started to run out of Paragons that I know and I've been able to get in touch with. So this is where you come in. I've created the Paragon Interview recommendation form. There's a spot here to tell me if you're a Paragon interested in coming on the show, and if you're not a Paragon yet, then there's a spot to tell me about local Paragons in your area that you'd like to see on the show. The link to the form is going to be down in the description, and if you click on it, it's going to look just like this, and you're going to be able to go in and recommend Paragons that you think should be on the show. And once they're in there, I will look into contacting them and seeing if they're willing to come on and talk to me. So please recommend people that you know that would be great guests. Thank you, and let's get you back to the main video. And we're back. So, Phinaes, we're going to talk about the archetypes for a minute. Now, we've briefly touched on them. There are 3 bard archetypes. There's Dervish, Legend, and Combat Caster. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Probably Dervish is the one that I've played the most with. What do you want to talk about with it?
So Dervish, for anyone who doesn't know, Dervish says that equipment costs are doubled. Each verbal gives double usage, which is a really, really strong art. Any archetype that gives you double spells is really, really powerful, and you're basically locked out of most of the bard equipment at that point. Like if you want to make good
Yeah,
use of
like
it,
I've
right?
tried to make a somewhat equipment dervish work. You can manage to buy like Florentine if you want to and try to make things work, but you have to get combat caster at that point. I've tried to make it work. I'm sure there's ways to make it work, especially if you're at the higher skill level with stick. But yeah, most of the time you're substantially more limited in what you can do equipment wise if you run dervish.
Okay. Now, normally, I feel like I see you usually either running a short sword. I don't think I've seen you running a lot of shield with Bard. So is Dervish
Yeah,
is your
short
main
sword.
archetype, right?
Usually, most of the time, short sword. Sometimes I'll go with that long sword if I just feel like I enjoy fighting with longsword, whether or not it's meta, as established earlier. I will oftentimes take a small shield because the passive defense is definitely worth it, especially if you don't know how well you can. If you're not quite sure how well you can rely on your team to provide good screening for you, having that shield allows you to kind of have that passive defense against spell balls, against arrows, and that sort of a thing. And also gives you a little bit more survivability if somebody closes without taking up a
Yeah,
free hand.
it definitely is a thing. I prefer punch shields myself. So if I'm buying when I play Bard, if I'm buying equipment, I always just get combat cast, and then
Hmm.
that works for you. But Dervish is insanely powerful, doubling your verbals. I don't think we really need to say much more than that. I mean, it's amazingly good. How much combat caster have you done?
I have actually in the past, especially when I was earlier before I kind of leaned more to Dervish Legend currently. I did a fair amount of
Mhm.
combat caster doing medium and short sword. So medium
Okay.
horde and a short sword using combat caster. I wouldn't say that I am like I would consider myself a competent stick fighter, but not necessarily a good stick fighter. And the main
Okay.
reason to do combat caster is if you are expecting to close with the enemy and actually be engaged in that stick fighting on a very regular basis. Because obviously, being able
Right.
to cast all of your spells without a free hand means that you can hunker down on that front line, shove somebody you don't want to fight, lost that other person, and turn it into a one on one very
Hmm.
effectively while also going, oh, I'm going to make it a one on one. Oh, hey, by the way, I noticed that you have this thing. I could pop up either like a Song of Determination if I think they're going to try to be if they're a bard and they might try to lost me or awe me. You can use that if you want to run down archers or the like. You can go and pop up your Song of Deflection
Hmm.
and just run them down. So Combat Caster is very good for that more in your face. I'm just going to get close and outstick people and control the battlefield in the sense of choosing my personal fight.
Okay. So to combine that with something we were talking about earlier with Bard double teaming, I feel like if you had two combat caster Bard, they can 2v1 anybody at that point.
To a
But
certain
you
extent, or at the very least, they can very effectively pick their battles.
right.
Because the thing that you will run into with Combat Caster, and you don't run into this as much on the local field, this will mostly be at a Kingdom field in my experience, is that even as a combat caster, as a battle bard, sidebar, in a lot of ways, the archetypes for bard are not technically the archetypes listed. There's like the playstyles of battle bard, control, and battery. So with the battle bard playstyle, which is enabled by combat casters especially, you only have those 2 points of armor. You can give yourself armor breaking through Song of Battle, and you can give yourself a suite of immunities depending on if you're who you're trying to rush down. But like if you're trying to rush down against like a paladin or an anti-paladin who can oftentimes just kind of shrug off a lot of the things you could try to do to them, they're if they actually have the more armor than you and they have either a crushing breaking pole or a large shield or other things that allow them or are your match at stick, at that point that's when you really get overmatched as a bard trying to close and
Okay.
be in the front line.
That makes sense.
Bard is a great at one-on-one, but once armor gets into the mix, you still have to deal with the armor in some way. But
You
battle
still have to
helps with that.
respect it a lot. Okay. Yeah, the Song of Battle feels a little underpowered to me. Like I've talked to a couple of people about this, and I feel like it almost should give shield crushing because
That would be too much. Because remember that Bard isn't really truly meant, quote unquote, to be the front line smasher. If you could, absolutely, if you gave Song of Battle armor breaking shield crushing, why would you ever not? It's
right.
become so easy to just chew through basically whatever defense they have at that point that you very much can do that frontline thing better than many of the martial classes, including ones like Scout that are more meant to be able to do some frontlining stuff.
You make a
So
good
it's
point.
important to keep, it's not right to say keep classes in their lanes, but it's important to keep them in their specialties to a certain extent. Let's be honest, we see this somewhat with Druid, where Druid can kind of, if they build it right, fill most any role they feel like, because they can manage to have more ancestral armor than
Mm-hmm.
the average warrior, because a lot of warriors don't necessarily have the full plate. Being able to run around with
Right.
weightless 2-point ancestral armor on a regular basis and a crushing, breaking, poison pole,
Yeah.
like,
One of the many reasons Druid deserves less, but I see what you're saying. A little bit ago, we talked about Legend, and you mentioned
mhm.
that you like to have Legend because it gives you some extra use of extension. You're less afraid to run out of it. That's actually why I never buy extension as a wizard, because I'm always like, if I'm spending
Waiting
the
for that perfect
points,
opportunity.
yeah, that's exactly it. That's the other reason why I tell people, like, especially if I'm training them, not to bother with Finger of Death, because you're going to hoard it. The end of the battle game problem, when I continue to realize, like, I'm not using the extension, versus the other half of the problem of, a lot of times, if you use extension and the other player doesn't realize you used extension, they just, one, won't take your spell, or two, won't hear you casting at them. Do you run into that problem a lot?
It does happen on occasion. Most of the time, in my experience, if they saw me casting it, they will ask, like, if they didn't cast those extend, they'll ask in the form of a question about it, and I'll say, yes, it's extended. And it's like, oh, okay, and then take it. In terms of using it, a lot of the times you have to make sure that the people you are targeting with it are engaged. I'm not going to use extension to hit somebody who's actually fighting on the front line. They will not hear you, especially at a
Right.
kingdom match. Even if it wasn't too loud, they are too focused on the person they are actively fighting, and it takes up so much of their cognitive load. If you try to shout at them from 50 feet away, they're just not going to notice. They're not going to hear you. The extensions are mostly there for reaching out and touching casters trying to hide
Mm-hmm.
behind the line, or for as casters are trying to close on you, being able to get off that insult or that awe or that break con before they get close enough to be engaging you. Because if you
Gotcha.
wait for that close range, oftentimes, especially against wizards nowadays, if you just wait into that close range, so often you'll walk up and then both you and the wizard will go, Callahan, I can really suppress. And then you're both kind of just standing there for 10 seconds, because
Right.
I don't think anybody I've encountered actually wants to try to adjudicate who gets the suppressed off first. We just say, okay, yeah, we're both suppressed. It's fine. Move on with our lives. It's 10 seconds.
Right.
And
So
then, but yeah.
the break con is so. This is completely unrelated, but uh,
Mhm.
I will have paladins use martyr on break con. I'm like, by the time
Oh,
you clonked over here and took the state, it was almost over.
yeah.
It
It
is
is
very much
almost
the counter
always the
spell.
wrong move to try to release BreakCon. Just wait for it to go out. Unless you absolutely need to have them casting something else
Right.
immediately, and you have a Swift, like as a, if you absolutely needed to, and you have a healer, and you need that wizard to cast a Finger of Death or a Wounding, or you know for a fact that they have a thing because you've set it up ahead of time of this wizard is going
Mm-hmm.
to do this thing, and you can
Yeah.
go, search for my binding spell at release.
Unless they're on your
Almost all the,
shoulder, like, actively ready to, like, if I just got rezzed and then they suppress me,
yeah,
then maybe. But most of the time, it's the wrong move, and it's like, and the, like, proactive break con is suboptimal. Like, if someone just runs up and suppresses you, this happens to me on a semi-regular basis. So someone will just run up and be like, haha, you're suppressed. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go position. Like, that's my opportunity to take 10 seconds, reevaluate where I need to be, and then get there.
yeah.
If I'm not actively casting, the break concentration is kind of pointless. It's very much the counter spell, not you're not getting in to actually do me problems. Unless you follow it up by
Yeah,
running at me, in which case I have to run away.
exactly. Like, as with most bard spells, it really depends on that follow up to be effective. The
Mm-hmm.
point of insult isn't just that it forces you to look at me. It's, I'm forcing you to look at me so you can't deal with that thing over there, and
Right.
forcing you to either rush me or to wait it out and get a release. It's forcing you to do something else. It's not just because I've insulted you. Haha, I did a
Right.
thing, I guess.
Well, and if you've got a, like, I can think of a bunch of scenarios where you would want to break con somebody, me specifically, or anybody, if you've got an assassin getting ready to teleport and you want to try to get past your wizard, suppress the wizard so the assassin can dash past insubstantial. What's the wizard gonna do? Chase him?
Yeah.
They're hoping to get the quick banish or the de-rift off, and you've suppressed them proactively to get them through there. That can work. But if you're just running up to the line, suppressing them and running back, like it's not doing anything.
Yeah. In general, you want to have a plan when you first engage. You want to look at what's going on the field, figure out what you need to do and what your team needs to be doing, and plan out possibilities ahead of time. Get up there, do the thing, and at the same time, be ready with the follow up to what you did. Very rarely is the first thing you do on an engagement going to be the thing that wins your team that engagement.
Right. The follow up is the important thing. And a lot of players miss the follow up, which that's the step that you need. So I'm glad that we're really hammering that point home. What is your go-to spell? What is your opening spell?
For an opening spell, it honestly really depends on the situation. All of the various spells have their utility. So if I'm walking up to a front line and I see a barbarian and a paladin and another barbarian or what have you, and I need to make a hole, I'll probably just walk up, wait for my allies to be there, shove one of them back, so now it turns from a 3v3 with one of the three being a bard to now it's a 2v2 with them backing off and my team can move in because that shove was what I could use in that situation. If it was a warrior, again, that's usually going to be the lost. If I backing up, the central thing you can do especially as a bard is figure out what is anchoring the success of the formation in front of you. Sometimes it's that warrior on the front where you have the warrior with a big shield and then a couple of other frontliners with poles or swords or whatever backing them up. But that big shield means you can't afford to close because you're not going to get through that in time. If you can get that warrior out of the way, suddenly that could open up and allow your entire front line to collapse onto their group and deal with that. The center of their formation might be the wizard on the back who keeps shouting heat weapons or woundings or something to disrupt your team. At that point, that's the linchpin that you kind of need to reach out and try to pluck out of the situation. It could be the healer that keeps being able to release or res their team or using undead minion or the like. So your first engagement isn't a specific spell, it's figure out what is that linchpin that is helping keep their formation effective and what can I do about that, even just for like 10 seconds to get that out of the way to help break up what they're trying to do so my team can capitalize on it.
Okay.
And the right spell for that depends on what class they are and what you're trying to do.
That makes a lot of sense. If you're planning your encounters like that, I approve. Shifting gears out of offense, going into defense a little bit. Does Bard have any intrinsic weaknesses? Anything that it's particularly worried about?
The biggest one is, as kind of mentioned earlier, especially if you're not running Battle Bard, which again, Battle Bard is a very, very common way to play Bard, and it has its own vagaries. I don't have as much experience with it. The biggest thing that Bard is vulnerable to, in my experience, is things like Monk and Paladin that can just say, "Oh, that's cute. You can't awe me. You can't lost me. You can't really cast at me because you don't have heat weapon," and can just close on you and force you to deal with them direct. Beyond that, wizards, depending on the matchup, can be the challenge also because of being able to have that counter break con, and then especially if they go break con into some sort of either hold person or wounding or something that basically preemptively stops you from acting. You have to be those are the things you those are the primary threats to you as a player that you need to be wary of is getting rushed down by people who can ignore your spell and people who can stop you casting for long enough to continue to shut you down after that fact.
Okay. We've already established Bard does not get that swift teleport like the glorious wizards do. But you mentioned that you can Swift Lost. Are there any other good get out of jail free cards for Bard?
Swift Lost is the best one. If you want to be cute with it, you can use Song of Visit. Song of Survival is a good at least once per life. If you are expecting it ahead of time, you have it planned, that can be a solid because it allows you to fight and then die an instead go insubstantial and fall back. Song of Survival, actually, I would say, is also very good for I need to make a reckless suicide play just to try to do something to break this up. Song of Survival, run in there, try to just get something done, realize that I'm not going to win the fight, but then once I die, I'm insubstantial, I just fall back out of there. Beyond that, mostly you need to be ready with a reactive ambulant shove or ambulant awe to be backing away and again, buy yourself that space, buy yourself that time to get yourself back to the right position. The best thing you can do as a bard defensively, and I've kind of touched on this before, is actually your positioning with your team. Personal anecdote from me, at an event I was at in the last year or two, I realized that I spent a substantial portion of like a 10-minute battle game vaguely threateningly with like a shield behind Song of Deflection because a good assassin's on the other team with a bow pointing a poison arrow at me. So I was like, okay, I need to be ready for that. I need to be ready for that. Support my team, but I need to be ready for that because they're there and able to pivot wherever. But what I realized is that by doing that, sure, I was protected by the Song of Deflection and I had the shield and all of that. But by doing that, I wasn't doing my job anymore. My job as a bard isn't to stand there threateningly with a shield and a sword. It can be, but that's not like if you wanted to do that, play barbarian, play paladin, etc. And the very next game, what I decided to do was I didn't let myself take a shield. I still bought a short, but I brought a 2-foot short that I had. I didn't allow myself to take Song of Deflection, and I forced myself. So I forced myself that my only defense, especially against ranged, was finding my frontline allies and going, "Hi, you're my shield. I'm here. You have a shield. You have a body. You have armor." I think did my headset just disconnect?
No, I can still hear you.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay. So, but yeah, rewinding that, using my allies for that defense and being able to then, okay, I'm in position where that archer can't get to me because my allies are in the way. Even though I had objectively less defense, I had so much more impact that game than the previous one because I could focus on doing my job of instead of standing there being threatening with a shield and a sword, with deflection, and being kind of a threat if they try to rush, I could be there and actually go, oh, there's a bit of a front line, do the thing I talked about earlier of shove some people off their front line, tell their healer to pay attention to me and stop releasing their ally. And then also, this kind of touches on something we'll probably touch on later, shouting at my team, okay, I've just gotten those two people out of the way. Push, push, push. Get in there, capitalize now. By dropping all of my defense from the explicit side and focusing on just using my positioning and my team as my defense, I could do my job substantially more effectively.
You got rid of arrow paralysis and got moving, and that saved your team.
Yeah.
So you play bard, you don't play the frontline bard, and you do some song switching, but are there any enchantments that you'll take over having your songs available to you?
Very rarely, because most of the time I want access to that Song of Power. I want access to that Song of Deflection for those times. I just need to run down the enemy bow user because that's something that Bard can very readily do. If for whatever reason I've decided that I'm not worried about the songs, like if it's a small enough game that Song of Power isn't really viable, or I decided to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on this other role for right now. The thing that I think is most helpful for Bard is anything that makes them immune to command, because command is the thing that is most likely to mess with what you're trying to do, because that is either an opposing Bard insulting or awing you or losting you. That is hold person. That is break con. That is suppress aura. So many of those things that stop you from doing things, it's in command. So if you can get immune command, whether that's via just adaptive protection command or more commonly Promag or E-Soul or lycanthropy or something, having that immune command to, once again, give you that latitude to focus on doing your job and not being disrupted in doing your job.
And getting the passive pro command instead of the active with the Song of Determination, that would be a big trade up, I think.
I could probably be better about this, but I actually very rarely take Song of Determination because the only times that I would get use out of Song of Determination is if I have it up. If I have it up and I'm keeping it up, I'm chanting Song of Determination, I'm not casting. And once I stop chanting it, that I have the edge because I know when I choose to stop chanting it, so I could
Mhm.
possibly win the breakcon fight or whatever by virtue of surprise. But that still requires me to be spending that time focusing on keeping somebody else from breakconning or suppressing me, rather than casting to release my allies or mend somebody's broken pole or telling their caster to stop casting and look at me.
Right. And I think that the Song of Determination, you can get mileage out of it. I was talking to a bard the other day. By the other day, I mean like last year, and they were telling me that they will dip into Song of Determination in between spells, and so like
Mm,
they'll cast a spell, Song of Determination, hang out in Song of Determination while choosing their next target, and so it's a
fair.
like passive hanging out suppression
Hmm.
protection, but that feels like a lot of time in Song of Determination, and I haven't played enough
Most of the
Bard to
time,
know if it's worth it because it's like
yeah, it depends. It is generally a good idea to have some song up if you can, because
mhm,
honestly, I would usually default to actually having Song of Deflection up if I am in just kind of
right,
a dead zone, because that like stray arrow or what have you from downtown is often the thing that is liable to kill you, especially if you haven't taken a shield, because you'd rather take the extra points to get twice as many verbals to have just more volume down range. So
right,
having that Song of Deflection means I can resist those more effectively. And most of the time, if I'm close enough that I'm worried about somebody casting a command spell on me, I should have some sort of front line in front of me who's closer to them already, and I should be casting at that point,
right.
is
I
the
feel
way
like
I view
Song
it.
of
Not,
Deflection's probably a pretty good resting song, like just always to have it going.
yeah,
Uh, If Song of Interference didn't require recharging, I would say that would be the premium resting song. But that one's almost the hard counter spell or the like wizard chasing spell.
yes, Song of Interference is weird because it makes you immune to magic, but it's really good for is as again on that battle bard play style of once you start your Song of Interference, you are either that you've insulted that wizard and then you start Song of Interference and just stare at them and say, "Hey, what you gonna do?" Or you are basically committing to moving forward and engaging because while you're doing the Song of Interference, you're not casting anymore until you drop it, and then it
Right.
takes a charge 5 to get it back. So you'd have to spend that time to get it back. So it's good for if you are expecting to close and you're doing that battle bard, you've got 2 points of armor, sword and shield. I'm closing with the enemy. If you're
I
doing a
found it's
more
also really good for like holding a point.
yeah,
Most of my Song of Interference experience comes from my front yard where I play with my children. But in my effort in making them well-rounded Amtgarders, I try to
mhm,
make them fight against every possible class. And we play a lot of like ring the bell.
sure.
Their favorite maneuver is shove dad off the point and then go ring the bell. And so I'll do a like
Mhm.
defensive Song of Interference and then just stand there like, all right, now what are you gonna do? And then
Yeah, and that's kind of a tangent, but like that's one of the things that I like about Monk is Monk isn't heck, in my opinion, Monk isn't really a frontliner, it's a wingman. It's
mhm,
really good at the fact that if you put a Monk slightly behind the line with a pole arm, you know it's not going anywhere because nobody can shove it off. They might heat the
right,
pole, which at that point you have backup weapons or you have an ally who can release it. Being able to have that, like, no, they're not going to be able to be casted off. They have to be pushed on to get off. Is
yeah.
the
If you
strength
had
that a
a
Monk brings to the fight in the front
I
line.
feel like you could build a really strong three-man team with like a really good monk, a really good barbarian, and a really good bard, and they could
Hmm.
complement each other. Because your monk is your discount healer, your bard keeps
Hmm.
the discount healer running at the discount. The barbarian and the bard both have the you can't move me ability that monk has, and then they can help each other keep that up. Then
Hmm.
the bard can keep everybody's equipment going and release the heated weapons.
Right.
That might be the trifecta right there. Is those three moving together?
I like Paladin in place of the Barbarian, but that's just me.
I could see that.
Guardian in
The
particular.
paladin has better immunities than barbarian, but barbarian's rage ability giving them total immunity for 7 seconds on a rechargeable, I think specifically makes them
True.
work better with bard, especially if the bard built for that, because then they can confidence
Mhm.
back the rages, and then your barbarian is almost impossible to move off the point with verbals, and they're immune to the spell balls that are going to be the most problematic.
True.
So
So
you're
being able to just not care about the ice balls in particular.
exact, because that's the like intrinsic weakness is the ice ball is the best spell ball right now, and it is the most
Mhm.
common spell ball, and so having that immunity there with the better verbal immunity as a scalable immunity rather than a passive immunity. Ethical immunity is really
Mhm.
good, but it's not sorcery immunity. Right? You're not going to be able to shove any of
Yeah.
those three off of that point. So then I don't know. I might have to play around with this and see if we can't spin something up. Okay, let's talk about teamwork for a minute, because we've ranged far and wide during our talk here. Is there any classes that you're looking for to have on your team? We're
Not
doing a
super
10v10.
proactive. There's not all the various classes have different roles that they play, and it's a lot about how do you make use of them. Like, I
Okay.
wouldn't say that there's one that I am particularly looking for. Like, obviously, having a healer on the team is really helpful, especially if you're willing to basically be a bard healer buddy team that just runs around being emergency medics. That could be a cool thing. There's a lot of pairings that you can do as a bard where you run alongside a paladin or a healer or be a pocket bard for a wizard or whatnot. But there's not like one them like, yes, absolutely, I love that. The closest just from that internal thing is potentially bard, just because of being able to potentially recreate that dream of just doing duo bard and just rolling that handshake build again, because that was kind of a dream come true. Because again, I'd been playing since 2018, and that had been the first time that I actually got like the duo bard actually rolling
Mm-hmm.
versus just like, okay, occasionally you'll get, okay, we do it like once and go our separate ways once or twice in the game. Being able to actually just be like, no, we're rolling as a team together. Granted, Bard isn't. It's getting more popular in the Rising Winds, but it's not quite to the point that I expect to have another Bard on my team, let alone another Bard that I can
You can
reliably
roll with.
say is going to be running in tandem with me.
Makes sense. Okay. I have a tangential rules question for you.
Shoot.
When do you consider spell lists to be locks? In most of the time at Rising Winds events, they're not checking spell lists before battle games all that much.
Right. Most of the time, just because of how games work out. Most of the time, I will have figured out what list I'm going to run after I find out what the like. I'll have a basic baseline idea, and I might make some minor
Mm-hmm.
modifications once I get a better idea of what the game is. I would consider from a rules perspective, I would consider the spell list to be locked when game on is called, because a
Right.
decent chunk of list building can be dependent on who you have on your team and what makes sense, because sometimes certain abilities, I'm drawing a blank as to good examples off the top of my head, but your team composition informs what lists you want to be running. You might want to run a full battery build if you know you have like multiple wizards and a couple of healers, and you're just like, you know what? I want to just keep those ones, like just focus in on just keeping those people rolling and doing their thing. Sometimes you look around and go, oh, we have no front line whatsoever. I should adjust my list to help at least provide some level of ability
Right.
to melee.
I was talking with
Most
somebody
of the
the
time,
other
it's not
day.
going to be a wild swing.
Right. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were trying to tell me that when you show up to the field before teams are picked is when your spell list is locked. I'm like, it's either when they say lay on or when they check your spell list. And
Mhm. Yeah, if you check your spell list, then yeah, it's locked at that point because that's the point of
right.
the spell list check. But
But
yeah,
if we're doing spell list checks, it's because we know what teams are going to look like at least a little bit ahead of time. It's usually the more
Mhm.
competitive events when we're doing spell list checks and not random walk up games. So,
yeah, I think the only time I've actually seen like proactive spell list check, I guess I've seen it like in passing a couple of times, but like the only times I can really think of offhand was at like Bridge Wars, where it's like, yes,
mhm.
you showed up with a dedicated fighting company team to a competitive battle game event.
You
We're
know what
going
your
to
list
double
is going
check
to
the
be.
spell list just to, yeah, you know who your team is, you know what your strategy is going into it. You've got it set already. It's competitive. That's when you check spell lists. If it's just like an average kingdom game, the amount of time it would take to effectively check everybody's spell list, and
Well,
two,
yeah.
trying to expect the Reeves to keep track of that on a 50 by 50,
Mm-mm.
50 versus 50 field. No, they're not.
It you're not going to be able to. At Bridge Wars this last year, going into the final battle game, they assigned each caster had their own. Every player had a reeve that was assigned to them, and I was
Hmm.
assigned to Artie, and I was like, "Hey, Artie, I'm going to check your spell list," and I like looked at his spell list. I'm like, "Okay, I know what Artie has now, and I can keep track of this." But unless you have a one-on-one reaving environment like that, the spell list check is about as important as checking someone's arm. It's less important than checking someone's armor. I mean, armor ratings are, I guess, less subjective than, or more subjective than spell list, because spell list it's just math, and so unless someone's
Yeah, most of the time
blatantly
it
trying
only
to,
really matters. Like sometimes somebody will ask, "Hey, how many of such and such spell do you have?" And then you say,
right?
"Yes, I am in fact running like a 20 shove a 20 shove build because I felt like it this one time. There's a reason that I keep
Yeah,
managing to shove people." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool, carry on."
yeah. You do need to have the list. I'm not advocating for
Yeah,
like not having it. The being able to call someone out on it is incredibly specific.
yeah,
You're not gonna realistically be calling out a specific unless someone's blatantly using 10 fingers of death at a time, and but the idea of the reeve catching someone with one too many shoves is unrealistic.
yeah.
And
And at the end of the day, the game depends on the honor system. It is, to
exactly,
be perfectly honest, it is basically trivially easy to cheat how many spells you have if you were so inclined to
yeah, you
miscount.
can do it
Like
with
it's
armor
not,
points, you can do it with spell. It's a game of honor, and if you don't have any, like, okay, you won real hard, I guess. The game
yeah,
relies on us all being honest with each other and agreeing that it's a game and doing our best.
yeah,
And it kind of falls apart as soon as you start like trying to nitpick it. This is why Amtgard
hmm,
couldn't work on like ESPN. You know,
yeah.
the best games have too many people, and so it just wouldn't work. It's a sport that
Touching on
is.
one
Go ahead.
one other thing related to, like, tangentially related to this, but I think is important to say. One thing that I think is very important is to strive to be challenged, not strive to succeed. If you
Mm,
strive to succeed, then if you lose the game, you get upset because you didn't achieve your goal. If somebody does something that you think is cheating and that cheats you out of your success, that makes you annoyed and you don't have fun. You start focusing on what is the most effective things to do, and you get narrow minded and very focused on that specific thing, possibly to the exclusion of actually making sure that the game is enjoyable for everybody else on the field. Like we all
mm.
know that person who just runs like pile of ice balls, icy blaster. It's like, yes, it's effective. It gets the job done.
Yeah, but I'm
But
also gonna make sure to kill you extra hard. Like there's I know exactly what you're trying to like. There's a
yeah,
balance to fun and not killing the fun, and you're you're objectively correct here.
yeah. By
Okay.
aiming to be challenged, you are both going to make yourself a better player because you're going to put yourselves in situations that require you to be more creative and require you to use what you have given to yourself more effectively. You're going to be seeking out the fights that will challenge you and make you have to be better to overcome them. And it also
Well,
makes the game more fun for the people you're fighting because, again,
mhm.
you're seeking out the challenging fights. You're thinking out ways to make the game challenging for yourself. You are helping people on the throughout your park because you want better fighters to go up against, to challenge yourself. I just think it's a much better mindset to want to be challenged than to want to succeed.
It is also important to set your own win condition, because
Hmm.
only 50% of people in any given game have to lose, and
Yeah.
so if 50% of the people have to lose, if everyone's goal is just to win, then half the people are going to be miserable. But if you set yourself a micro goal or a specific thing that you're
Hmm.
going to do, like, okay, I am going to go and attack this objective over and over and over again, and I'm going to try to take that objective, or I'm going to try to make sure that I kill this player that's a little bit better than me, or
Hmm.
uh, or you can just make something goofy, Like, I'm going
Yeah.
to try to engage that player and make them laugh during this game, or whatever your objective wants to be. The best battle gamers aren't worried about the like winning and losing actual battle games. They're worried about their performance in the battle game and if they measured up to the metric that they set for themselves. Yeah. If
Exactly.
if the team wins, the team wins. At the end of the day, like, did you do your best? Is that the best you were able to do? Then you did it.
Did you have
There's
fun?
an important metric. If you're not having fun, what are you doing? I got done playing at Bridge Wars, and I went and congratulated somebody on their Bridge Wars play. And I'm like, hey, it was, I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but I talked to somebody at Bridge Wars, and I was like, did you have fun? And they're like, no, I hate playing this class. I wish I wasn't good at it, so they'd stop making me play it. I'm like, don't play that class then. If you just say no. If you hate playing this class because it's not fun for you, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing. Like, find your fun, do more of that.
Yeah.
We've been going for almost an hour and a half here, so I do want to dash us ahead a little bit here. And
Okay.
let's jump down to let's go to this one. Now that you're at Paragon, in the Rising Winds, we've got our Paragon board. What's something that a Bard player can do to stand out to you as a potential Paragon?
Honestly, once again, focusing on that team play, the thing that would stand out head and shoulders above is proactively, again, recognize that linchpin and get it locked down. If someone starts charging near you, immediately jump into that Song of Power. Be responsive to the situation and also be willing to take some charge. A lot of the times, again, as a bard, your primary weapon is your team. And a lot of the time, and this is something that I have been working at getting better at myself, that requires somebody to step up and coordinate and being willing to go, hey, I need a frontliner here. And you look around the field and go, oh, there is a person there with a board and a pole who's trying to find something to do. Hey, could you come over here and fill this gap? A lot of effective bard play isn't just what spells you cast or the like. It is how do you get people where you need them to be? How do you coordinate? Stepping into that leadership role very much helps as a bard.
Okay.
So yeah. So to to sum up, learn the tactics, actively work with your team. Don't just run alongside your team. Try to actually work in concert with your team. And when something comes up and somebody needs your support, be willing to take it on faith that they know what they're talking about. Move over and roll with them. If somebody says, "Hey, I need somebody to do such and such," volunteer for that. Go for it and help out. Fill in those roles where you need to be helped.
What advice would you give someone who's just starting out in Bard?
Part of it is, once again, strive for challenge, not success. If your only goal is to get Paragon Bard and you don't get it early, you start getting frustrated. It starts being not fun. It starts dragging on you. If you aim to be challenged, if you aim to have fun, enjoy playing it. On to that, don't be afraid to focus in on sub areas. I know when I first started out, I believe this was my first event at Forest Lake. I had been playing at a local park for a while, like a couple of years at that point, actually, before I got to larger scale events. I got out onto the field and realized I got cognitive paralysis because I had too many choices. I had the sword, and I was I remember I had the long sword and I had the spells, and I get kind of vacillating between trying to do too many things at once and trying to have all my possible bases covered with my spell list and all this. And what I realized was that what I needed to do was to step back and focus in on one sub aspect and do that well and learn how that aspect works. Be willing to take the time to learn each part of it and find what you enjoy and expand upon that. But yeah, have fun with it, challenge yourself consistently, and don't be afraid to take your time to get deeper into individual topics.
Right.
Kind of applies to most playstyle, but
for sure.
Bard specific, a lot of what we've talked about of learn to recognize that linchpin, learn what other classes can do and what their strengths and weaknesses are and how you can play off of that.
That's just
I guess
solid
that once
advice
again
in
kind of is a
general.
very general advice.
I
but
approve of it though. Bard can do a lot of cool stuff, and sometimes that general advice is what you really need. So, moving towards our wrap up here, What are you working on now? What's your next Amtgard goal?
So the thing that I am working on at this point is to raise the level of my stick skill. As I mentioned earlier,
Mm,
I consider myself a competent stick fighter, but not necessarily a good stick fighter. I'd
okay.
like to get better at that. So the thing that I'm actually going to be doing is playing more assassin, playing more monk, stuff in that vein where I don't have the tools to fall back on, probably more so on monk's side, where I don't have the tools to fall back on of escaping combat, where I kind of have to more so engage on that front line, which is a bit of a lacking aspect in my bard play, honestly, is being able to engage with stick and be
Hmm.
a good fighter on the field. Again, I can usually hang for a little bit, especially if I start wearing armor. I'd like
Right.
to get that stick skill up to kind of help be a little bit more well-rounded of an amped garter. And let's be perfectly honest, stick skill helps with literally every single class. You can
It
play some
does.
classes in ways that don't require stick skill, but good stick elevates basically every class you could possibly want to play.
Okay. Have you taken on any apprentices yet? And is that something you see yourself doing?
I have not as of yet. I might possibly, even if I don't take on like formal apprentice, I
Hmm.
am always happy, but not always necessarily. I'm sure there's times when I'm like, in the middle of a battle game or asleep or what have you. But I am almost always willing to chat with people, to theory craft, to discuss tactics, to work on bettering the game. Like again, I love this game. It's a lot of fun for me. And the more people play it and the more people are play it skillfully, the better. I like helping people figure it out. So feel free to, if you see me at a Kingdom event, come find me, come chat with me. If you're fighting on the same team as me, literally come up to me and say that you want to run as a squad. I Most of my favorite memories throughout all of Amtgard are oftentimes fairly small moments of moving in concert, of a
Mm.
squad doing things together proactively and achieving a goal by so doing. Even if it's not like the game winning play or this amazing swords duel, those moments of actually running alongside and working together. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to, again, ask me for that and ask me to feel free to ask me for advice. Feel free to tell me if there's things that you notice that I could help, I could do better. In general, we're all in this to have fun, and I'm happy to help people.
Do you have any final advice for other bards before we go?
Final advice for bards that doesn't isn't what we've already
I know that's a hard ask at this point.
honestly, I feel like the main sticking points of advice have kind of been sprinkled throughout this entire thing so far.
Yeah.
There's a I guess to sum up my view on Bard, there is a time and a place for hero play of being the guy doing the thing. Almost all the time, doing awesome stuff with a teammate and supporting and getting that working is going to be more fun and is going to be more effective than straight up pure hero play. Your primary
Right.
weapon as a bard is your ally, even if you're playing battle bard.
Okay.
You can always do more as a group of two or three people working in concert than those two or three people can do if they're all just kind of acting simultaneously alongside each other ish, if that makes sense.
No, I know exactly what you mean. All right, that's some pretty good final advice there. Well, Phineas, thank you for coming on the show and talking to me about bard play. It was super fun to get our paragons at the same time, and
Hmm.
I'm excited to see you get that stick skill up and start playing battle bard. I think that'll be really neat. To you, our viewers, if you've enjoyed this video, please let us know, like and subscribe. And then if you have any questions for Phineas, put them down in the comments section. I'm always lurking down in there and responding to people. So I will see you all in the next video next week.